So first off, thank you, Elizabeth, for inviting me to speak. Little did I know, a week or two ago when we first met, I told you I needed to get more active in the community and get better at my speaking skills, that you would have me up on stage as a keynote speaker. So thanks for the pressure. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about my story, my company, and hopefully it can serve as motivation to someone here. And I would like to have you guys to engage with me by, when I say, you know what, I'd like for you to respond with what? Fair enough? You know what?
What?
This is a method that I use to try to engage people to get their attention so that I can deliver the message a lot more effectively. So now that you've got it, I want to talk with you about my story, my life, and how I've gotten to where I'm at in life, and what it takes to succeed in business, at least from my perspective. I'm Ralphael Locklear, owner of Southeastern General Contracting. We are a design-build company. We're located in Hope Mills, behind Samuel's restaurant. We've been in business since 2004. We specialize in custom homes, new commercial developments, and government contracting. You know what?
What?
One of my favorite quotes is that I learned that success and failure are both predictable. How many of us believe that? By a show of hands. Okay. So, I'm going to do a little exercise here. If you see someone who doesn't admit their mistakes or who doesn't learn from their mistakes, what usually happens? They make the same mistake, right? If you see someone who takes actions and fails but learns from their failures and tries again and again and eventually not making the same mistake, what do you think happens to that person? They succeed. So by definition, success and failure is indeed predictable based on how one responds to the failures. I'm going to use an analogy here that we all know. We all know it intuitively. When you see a baby making their first attempt to walk, what do we all do? Anybody remember that moment? We all smile, we all reach, and even if that baby falls, we reach up and grab that baby, typically hold it up by its hand, and encourage that baby to continue to try again and again and again until eventually that baby learns how to walk flawlessly. Now, every one of us went through that journey at some point in time in our lives. And from the looks of it, we all succeeded. None of us failed. So, isn't that interesting? It's intuitively in us, in our DNA, to keep trying. And as we get older in life, something happens. Sometimes we stop trying. And therefore, a lot of our failures lie in stop trying. Now, what would happen if that infant, that baby, just stopped trying? Have you ever seen anyone continue to crawl around in their late 40s? I don't think anybody's seen that. So therefore, we all are winners. So I just wanted to use that analogy to kind of set the tone for my story. And, you know, I was adopted. Some people that may see us on the internet now in some of our videos and see us at maybe what they perceive as a certain level of success, you know, they may be mistaken thinking, oh, it's easy, or they've had it easy. But my story has been anything but easy. But the blessing that I've always had is that even though I was adopted, even though I was in the social services, foster care, I had a lady that always believed in me. And I never really knew my mom much at all, never knew my dad until I was 24 years old. But as a young boy, I was placed in the foster care system at 2 years old, and I was blessed enough to spend quite a few years with my adopted mother. And those years with her helped shape the man that I am today. Even though I only spent a few years with her, she always spoke life into me, and she would tell me how great I was going to be, how I would break generational curses, how I would be an awesome husband, amazing father, and essentially a blessing to many. And I want that last phrase to stick out because that's the thing that I've held on to my whole life, a blessing to many. And, you know, I fail every day. I make mistakes every day in personal life and in business, but just as I started out with that story about an infant getting up and trying again and again and again, I use that every single day. So, about 11 years old, my adopted mother, she got stricken with cancer. And those years, I never knew what it was like to be a foster. Even though I was in the foster care system, I never felt like I was a foster child. That was an amazing gift she had. And as I became a parent, I often wonder when I see other children in the foster care system, and I see parents that have their own kids and also have a foster kid in their home, how much of a challenge that has to be to show that foster kid the kind of love to where it never knows the difference between being a foster child and being in the same household with the parents' blood children. That's something that is simply amazing when you see it. She had that gift. She used to speak life into me every night. She would rub my hair and tell me all these things. And even in her death, one of the things that I remember, and I lean on quite a lot, is that in her last moments, her kids and myself was gathered around her bed, and I was at the foot of the bed. And I was pretty rough, you know, coming up, you know, the foster kid, and you know, I didn't understand why someone at that age with being sick parents would want to take care of a child like me that was ungrateful at the time, unappreciative, even when she couldn't take care of herself. And the kids tried to talk her into giving me back to the foster care system. Mama, you're not in a position where you can take care of a child. You know, he'll be all right. But she made them promise. She made all of our kids promise her before she passed that they would look after her, that they would take care of her. She said, you know, I'm Lumbee, I'm from Robeson County, so I'm going to tell you exactly how I remember she telling me. She said, God don't see any good in that boy, but I do. She said, and she made her oldest son. I didn't understand the reason then, but I understand now. She knew that her oldest son would, if he told her that he would take care of me, she could rest assured it would get done. And she told me, she said, don't let anybody put their hands on him. Don't let anybody beat knock on him. She said, that boy is going to do amazing things. She said, and you don't see it now, but one day you will. He's going to be a blessing to me. So I continued on, and you know, my brother, he took me and raised me. And that's how I got introduced to the custom home building industry. He was in construction. He was my father figure. He's passed now also. And every summer, anytime I wasn't in school, I was on the job site. And I didn't like it. I hated it that time. 110-degree weather, taking lumber and Pinehurst, and, you know, but I'm so grateful for those experiences now, because that's what helped shape me into the man that I am today. And with my adopted mother convincing her son to take care of me, I got to see what a manly man was like. So up until then, I was in a house with an elderly woman, which that was a blessing because I got the love and nurturing that I needed in those moments. But then later on, I got to see what it really took to become a man and provide for his family. And you know, there was a lot of struggles through those years, and I won't go through the whole story. I just want to give you guys the gist of, from my experience, what success looks like. It's a lot of failures, but it's also a lot of determination to never sit and just feel sorry for yourself. You always got to get up and try again. And so, as I was aging, as I was maturing, I realized I wanted to become an entrepreneur. I realized that, you know, I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to have a traditional family structure. You know, I didn't have a mom and dad, you see, and so my wife's sitting over here at the table, and you know, it's one thing I really am grateful for is that my adopted mother said I would break generational curses. I did it. She said that I would be an amazing husband. I hope I am. And with my kids, you know, my kids, I tell them all the time, you guys will never know what it's like to grow up with some of the pain of not knowing, not wondering why your mom doesn't come look for you, why your dad doesn't come look for you. And you know, being in households where other children are teasing you, because you know, kids are kids, you know, but some of that stuff, it never leaves you. And I just want to help deliver a message here today that, you know, success and failure is predictable. And my adopted mother, she saw in me at a very young age, and it still amazes me when I think back on it, like, how did she know? How did she know I was going to be the one? You know, I've got a general contracting business, and it's just, people ask me sometimes, you know, how am I doing? I say, if I do any better, I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes I feel undeserving when I look around. And I just hope that I don't ever lose God's favor in my life and in my business. And with success in business, the same principles apply. You know, I started in business, and I felt I've been in business 20 years now. And these past 3 to 4 years is when it really started to take off. And I've learned that just like that infant, you know, who tries to walk, who falls down, who has a loving and nurturing environment around it that encourages that child, teaches that child, that molds that child to get up, keep trying. The same principle applies into business, but it ain't just that. You know, it's even more. So most businesses fail within 5 years, and you don't even have to try, and you're guaranteed to fail. And even when you try your hardest, the statistics are against us. Most of us are going to fail. But through God's grace and my determination and my stubbornness, I refuse to fail. And thankfully, you know, we're on a good trajectory. You know, we've got a good, diverse background now with the services that we provide. If you look up general contractors in the Fayetteville area, you'll see our company. We're one of the highest rated design build companies in Fayetteville. We take a lot of pride in that. Before, during, and after the service, we've worked for clients, highly esteemed clients such as lawyers, doctors. We built multi-million-dollar homes. We built homes that cost $200,000. We give the same passion, love, and nurture to the smallest of custom homes we do to the largest, even with commercial development. And we've taken that and put it into everything that we do. And you know, I always think back with things that my adopted mother told me. You know, and I'm looking down at my screen, and the thing that I'm, you know, closed with is that phrase, "a blessing to many." I used to often wonder how does she know that? Like, blessing to many. And little did I know, I believe was part of God's plan that she saw in me as a little boy. So, in all the lessons that I learned in business, the failures, I always lean back on that, being a blessing to many. And I use this company as a vehicle to do that, being a blessing to people who, most people work their whole lives to build their custom home, their forever home for their family. They, you know, that's their biggest investment. And me and my team, make no mistake about it, I realize the severity and the weight of what that carries for each and every family that we work with. And I'm just grateful that we have been able to survive a lot of what most companies aren't able to survive. There's been times where me and my wife's been at the desk, and like every business, if you guys are entrepreneurs, I know you know the feeling, worrying about making payroll, and you know all the stresses that come with that. But as I began, I want to end too with kind of the same storyline, is that success and failure is predictable. The benefit was that I knew that. I knew that when I first started, I had to get wisdom. And you know, I'll tell you this, is that another thing that I learned is to be successful in our homes, with our wives and with our family, a lot of those same principles is the same principles we have to adapt in our business. Communication skills, I'm still learning those. Persuasion skills, the art of negotiation, everything's negotiation. Now, I remember there was this one pivotal time where I was failing tremendously bad, and I knew that if I didn't get this right, I was going to have to go work at McDonald's. And I'm like, you know, I scheduled two projects back to back, custom home projects, and I failed at it the first time. One of my partners happened to be in a meeting with me, and he's pretty brutal. He don't mince his words, and I didn't know what I needed to know, and I bombed both of those deals. I really need them in a bad way. He asked me, he said, what are you doing? You don't know how to read the room. You don't know how to read people. You're not going to be successful in business unless you get a grip on this. Now, a lot of people take criticism the wrong way, but I was grateful for it. I didn't like how he delivered it. It was harsh and it was brutal, but he was telling me the truth. But you see, I was thankful because now I knew what I needed to work on. And that's what I did. I went and I got to work learning the process. Anybody in the business here knows there's a process, a sales process. Every industry is different. Mine, there are several steps along the path, and you see, at the time I didn't know any of the steps. I knew how to build a new construction. So I learned that in everything is predictable. Success and failure is predictable. If I'm sitting at the table with someone who's wanting to design and build, and I can know that this gentleman is here at the decision-making process, I don't need to be talking to him about trying to sell it. And so with those failures, I learned, and I kept learning, and I kept learning, and then I intentionally scheduled meetings back-to-back again the next time. It was only 3 weeks afterwards. My business partner at the time, he came to me and said, "What are you doing? Why are you scheduling another meeting like that? Did you not realize how bad you failed just a few weeks ago? You see where the bank account's at? Don't do it." I told him, I said, "I took your advice, I got it." He says, "All right, I want to sit in on the meeting." Sat in on the meeting. At the end of the meeting, we got 2 checks, 2 deposits, roughly around 100 grand. As soon as the clients walked out, he looks, makes sure that they're gone. He locks the door, it goes back, he's like, "What is that? Like, just a few weeks ago, you couldn't even read the room. And now you don't even normally close the first deal. You have to meet people 3 times. You know, the whole adage, you gotta touch people 3 or 4 times before you make a sale." And yet, here it was, 2 meetings back to back again, I was able to close myself. And I realized something about myself in doing that. And I think in business life, you can't fix something that you don't know what the problem is. I realized what the problem was, and I've just repeated that over and over. Sometimes we worry about trying to know everything. Sometimes you just take it one bite at a time. And that's what we've done, and we've made a lot of strides, and I appreciate you for offering, to help me with in the area that I needed help, and put me in front of these fine folks. And, I'll finish on this, is that we're just tremendously blessed, and I just hope that I can continue as leading my company, be a blessing to the people that trust our company. But also, too, I'm starting to realize the importance of embracing our story, what makes us who we are, and what drives us. And so everybody can understand our why. And that's something that we hadn't been doing a good job in, but that's something I made a commitment to do, and this is an effort to demonstrate that. I think this is my second time kind of speaking in front of a group like this, so hopefully I'm not doing too bad of a job, but I thank you for allowing me to share my story. And if any of you guys ever need a designer, a builder, feel free to reach out to us. I promise you, I give you my personal promise to you, we'll treat you guys first class before, during, and well after the sale. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak.
So one thing that I didn't get to share at the beginning, I don't know if, I know a lot of you saw the article that we pushed out about Southeastern General Contractors. They did an incredible job for Fort Liberty and with the trash backup problem that was going on base. So I just wanted to say thank you again for stepping in and assisting where it was needed. If you could just share just a brief overview of how that went and what the background was behind it.
So yeah, as I mentioned, we also are doing government contracting now, primarily at Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty. I know some people prefer one or the other, so you just use the term I use, Fort Braggarty, if it works. So yeah, there was a major issue out at the base. Is anybody here military that's out at the base working? So you guys, did you remember about the whole issue about the trash buildup about 6 months ago? So there was, it was a pretty big deal. Washington was on the phone with Fort Liberty daily. We're not in the trash business. We're general contractors. But we gain the trust of the base to be able to deliver on projects that most people run away from if they don't have the expertise per se in that area. And I happened to be in the room when the conversation was going on about, solving that problem. You've got Waste Industries locally, you've got GFL, all of them are big companies. But for whatever reason, they couldn't get the job done. The logistics of getting the equipment in like a week or two was not possible. And everybody was saying, no, it's impossible. And I happened to be in the room. We're Native American owned company. We're 8A certified, HUBZone certified. We check all the boxes that the government needs to be able to execute quickly on contracts. And they asked me, did I have any experience in that industry? And sometimes, sometimes we're inclined to say things just to get a deal. And I believe that's the test too. But I told him, I said, I don't have any experience in that. However, he said, do you think you could do this? I said, there's a saying, you don't have a problem if money solves it. You guys got the money. So I know I can solve it as long as the money's there to allocate for this job. Now, it wasn't as easy. We went back and forth on that contract about a month. Like, we're on and we're off. There's a lot of politics going on. The big boys wanted that contract. We're little old Southeastern general contractors. We're not in that industry, but God made a way. And when I made the phone call, they were like, how can you get these equipment? Everybody's saying they can't get it. It's going to be 6 months or a year. And, how can you get the equipment and everybody else said they're not able to get it? I told the contracting officer, said, well, all I can tell you is when I called, they got it. They're like, how is that possible? I said, all I know, I got God's favor. They're like, Mr. Locklear, it ain't enough. It ain't enough. Well, you got to give me some more of how are you able to do what they're not able to do? I said, first off, there's an advantage to being small. We can move quicker. You don't have to go before a board. I can literally make a decision. I can bring it before my team and we can execute. And it did help that I had video proof showing that trucks were waiting for us. And I made a gamble on our company, on our team, and I sent the company that had the trucks a $10,000 wire, non-refundable. And I'll give Mark credit here. I started not to do it. The only way I could lock in that deal was to send the wire. But who's going to send the wire for $10,000 and not even have a contract? That's not good business. That's not smart, traditional business. Sometimes we got to think outside the box. Sometimes we got to be willing to invest in ourselves. And Mark reminded me of that. And that's the importance of having good people around you. Because, we're all the same. We all have those self-doubts. And wanting to say no. And I think what that you told me, Mark, you got that much in crypto. What do you think? Like, you got that much in crypto, spend the money. And we did that. And so we had the trucks on reservation. We got the trucks within a week when the contract was awarded. And they asked me, how were you able to do that? Now, there's one thing when you got God's favor, and I don't even want to take credit for that, but He gave me the ability to see an angle on how to position that deal that nobody else saw. And we were able to secure that deal. What everybody else said would take 3 months, 6 months to get the base cleaned up, we had it done in 3 days. And we now have our system set up in such a way to where it's running more efficiently than it's ever ran before. We've got a system to where it tracks every can location with a Google drop in. We've got a software that maps the routes. Our guys are at home 2 or 3 hours early every day with their families. They're getting paid more money than what they were getting before, and their quality of life is improved tremendously. And, again, we're not in the trash business, but everything that I've learned in the general contracting business, custom home building, the principles are the same. And so we were able to go in and help Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg out and get that issue to become a non-issue. We gained their trust. And now when we walk in there, there's a stand that says, never fear, Locklear's here. So that makes me feel real good.
All right, thank you so much. We definitely appreciate you coming out tonight and bringing your beautiful family, your team, guests. Your story definitely speaks volumes, and I'm excited about some of the things that we've been talking about and the opportunities to come. I will tell you all, it's not completed yet. However, we have some amazing things coming up for the youth of this community, and Elfie Brand Community Alliance will be partnering with Southeastern General Contractors on some things that we're gonna bring some great opportunities to really pour into our youth for the future. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with the next part of our evening. So let's see. Some of our guests are not here tonight.